Welcome to week 2 of the open video call hosted by the ICA. We are talking to Matt Lavine about his video Collision Gripper. Thanks so much to the ICA for facilitating this talk, and we have closed captioning provided by Beth. So if you go down to the bar at the bottom of Zoom, on the right-hand side, you can activate closed captioning. Just also want to say, open video call this year was curated by Lino Kino. We're a Philadelphia-based media arts collective that organizes experimental art exhibitions around the city and now virtually. And so this talk is being moderated by 2 members, me, Matthew Ober, and Marcus. You want to introduce yourself? Marcus.
I'm Marcus Maddox, member of Lino Kino. I've been in Philly for a couple of years, and I'm also a photographer. And I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, same. So yeah, let's get into it. How are you today, Matt?
I'm doing well. I've just been, waiting for sitting at home, waiting to sit at home and talk to you guys.
Yeah, watching the clock all day.
Exactly, checking my watch. No, but I'm doing well. Really happy to be, part of this whole thing. Pretty honored to be, in a museum.
Yeah, yeah, big time. Yeah, we're so excited to talk about a lot of things, but yeah, about Collision Gripper. It was a video that was really exciting to all of us. And yeah, do you want to just start by, I guess, just talking about your process in making it? Because
yeah, of course. So okay. So I finished school in 2019, in June 2019, and I went to a liberal arts college as I was an art major, and I think similar to a lot of if people who take that path, it's not as it's very good for discourse, and it's very good for making art from like a critical position. People are really smart there. People have a lot to say. It's not an art school, so it doesn't have the resources and expansiveness of an art school. So that's how people spend their time. So after school, I was pretty interested in sort of kind of changing my practice a bit. I've always been pretty interested in process-based video art, although I think I was mostly interested in just making things that looked cool, and I didn't really know how to articulate videos I was making besides like, I think this looks cool. So I was pretty excited to hop back into having a process-based practice. So this video, Collision Gripper, is made in a video game engine called Unity. It's open source. It's not open source, I lied. It's free for hobbyists like myself. And I essentially, the way I use it is I hack it a bit. So there's these things to the left of me.
Yeah, give us a tour of the setup.
Yeah. So this is my bedroom and studio. So these things are called video mixers. They're pretty cheap online. You can get one for anywhere between like lowest like $20. They're essentially audio, like similar to audio mixers. You push in different streams of audio, and you mix them based on how you want the audio to be heard. So a video mixer, they're used primarily if you're recording something live, maybe a news broadcast, maybe like you're recording something for like your church. I know like churches sell them a lot on eBay. And you want to combine different video streams and maybe like, audio and like closed caption as well. You might use a video mixer just to mix those different video streams. VJs and artists have used them for pretty much since they've been around, like the 80s maybe? 80s, I think, as a feedback machine. So essentially you would take the output, a cable. Oh, I won't grab a cable right now. And you push it back into the machine, and it creates this feedback loop. And essentially, if you play with like the color functions, just the inboard functions, and it just loops and loops and loops, it starts to create these wild colors. The machine essentially just freaks out, and it turns into like you can press these buttons and different colors happen, different things happen accordingly. So people use that a lot. I know people in Lino Kino have used video mixers. I've seen a couple screenings with that. So essentially what I do is I have a feedback loop with this video mixer, except in between the cable, the output going into the input, I have my laptop, and my laptop is running this video game essentially, and the video plays in with the feedback, and it that's essentially how the video gets made. So the way that I use it, and if anything doesn't make sense, stop me and you can ask a question. So I have two video mixers here. One of them is just for video. You can see in the in Collision Gripper, there's a lot of different colors, but then there's also some still colors. A lot of time the people are just a single color or a couple colors. So I have two different streams going. One that's being pumped out, being pushed into a video mixer, then the video mixer pushes it back into a laptop, and that feedback loop happens. Then I have a second stream that pumps out from my computer, goes into my second video mixer, and sort of just gets placed right on top of the feedback. And then both those mixers just pump out into like this little capture card, and I capture it onto a USB. And then I upload the USB to my computer, and I can edit it from there. So I'm really interested in, it's a pretty long process. It was a pretty long process developing this, and Collision Gripper was kind of for most of my time between me starting this project in October and me submitting it in April, was me just figuring out what was best to do, like how to make this look the best. It's a really new process. I'm still learning. I'm still playing with it, but yeah, I think a big part of the video was I just didn't know. I was just playing. Like I didn't have an intention on what I wanted to look like in the end, and that's something we've spoken about is the way it came out. And
yeah, it hasn't like it's very organic and has a playfulness to it that I think we all really love, and the fact that it's kind of multi-layered effects. It's because when you watch it, it's incredibly lush and distorted, and you don't really know, like it wasn't obvious immediately how you did it. So that kind of there's that kind of magical quality when you watch it. You're kind of, at first you're trying to figure out what you're looking at, and then you kind of learn the vocabulary of it as it goes on. And I think that's really cool. Like kind of how like it was an exploratory process for you, but like the viewer also kind of gets to go down that, exploratory road. But no, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it was very familiar to me. Like it felt familiar when I first looked at it, and it's funny because I didn't think of video games the first time that I saw it, but after diving deeper into it, I did start to think of it like a PlayStation 1 game, something really nostalgic, and it has like a timeless quality to it, the piece, because of the faceless characters, and they're not, since you didn't like think about how to represent people specifically, it has a sort of like timeless, iconic sort of quality to it, where they're sort of the characters are timeless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting how maybe how you're saying like you were kind of just you use this project as a way to test out this technology, and I think the form that it's in, like the medium of this 3D rendering, the 3D animation, it allows it to contain a lot of like meaning and like changing meaning. Like I think it's not because it's not set in the real world. It wasn't captured. You weren't capturing a real scene. I feel like, yeah, it allows it to change maybe more than other pieces. I don't know. I'll talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I definitely, I think video art is typically, like for me personally, like in my time sort of divulging into, like, since I was little, I would, point the camera back at the screen and things like that. It's just like stuff that looked cool and had a pretty immediate impact. And something that really like excited me about this process is being able to work in this sort of program, Unity, that I'm able to emulate the world, and having to deal with, video art as like a means for, or like experimental, video as a means for just like expression and, not necessarily at all representing the real world, and like working in this video game engine, which very explicitly is interested in representing the real world. That's definitely, something I wanted to play with. The sort of things that I could like keep it grounded, like, using, people, the people are walking, but at the same time playing with scale. There's some really large people represented. There's some really small people. Trying to balance the two is something that I was really interested in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's different, definitely different shots with different sort of spaces. Sometimes it feels claustrophobic and small, with the white border around the frame, and people are all smashed together. And then there's other shots where it feels spread out and it feels zoomed out, and you see this world and this sort of like grand scale, and you can like feel the space around the people. So I definitely thought that there was a variety of movement and space and scale and characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know. Should we go into like meaning already? I mean, we don't have to organize this.
Yeah.
I
guess the piece itself. I mean, it's
sorry. Go.
Yeah, it's funny just making it at the time I am, and when I made it and when I submitted it, I didn't have, I was pretty excited to, which I think is pretty nearsighted of me, to make a piece that just, was kind of disinterested in participating in discourse outside of like, this is a cool process. I think, since beginning of March, it's been a pretty tumultuous moment in history, in our current day. And it definitely makes, I think me and I think you guys, it makes the piece feel kind of different, especially like, it was a pretty charged caption you guys wrote for it back in April, I think, when it was when OVC was supposed to air, and even after it got postponed, the caption felt a lot heavier. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched it in April, I had a lot of feelings about it. It meant certain things to me, and like now it's just totally different. Like it's just like my first read of it is just not at all like when I watch it now. It's just, and I think that's just like the experiences that we're all going through and that we've all like seen, in the news and the media, like just the crush of bodies is just it just, I mean, it just means a whole lot more, or it just like it's a lot darker, it's a lot heavier when when you're thinking about these protests and police brutality, and attacked by police officers. And yeah, I mean that like it's so interesting how in the course of a month, like that wasn't in my head at all, you know, when I first watched it, and now it's the only thing that I can see when I watch it. So that's super interesting.
It's funny. I mean, like you know, when I was in school, I made a lot of work like about how technology is not neutral. Technology is very much the creation of its makers, and its makers, you know, like everybody is not neutral. And then I graduated and I made this, and I was like, I pushed that notion aside. It's kind of coming back, and even like I think all programs, you know, it's kind of easy to tell like when something's made in Photoshop. I think that's an example. Like something looks like, if something's made like super heavily with like Photoshop's presets, it looks like a Photoshop thing. Like it's pretty obvious to tell like that, you know, that like it's not just ones and zeros, that you know, a piece of software very much has its maker's hand, you know, within the, you know, behind the scenes, behind the presets, the interface. And that's definitely something I've kind of been thinking about and dealing with, you know, Unity being a program that's made to represent the real world, kind of from this God perspective, you know, just kind of grappling with, you know, what am I the maker saying about art? What am I the maker saying about, you know, interactions, you know, computers and Unity itself? It's very much based on hierarchy. Like this cohort of people act in this certain way because I scripted them to, you know, with code, with and I'm thinking about how do I grapple with my non-neutrality.
Yeah, I mean, how like like yeah, the implicit bias in programming, in like, you know, having a software or you know, having a machine that you're teaching, you know, the people who made Unity, you know, taught it to do certain things, and that, you know, the bias that they imbued in it, you know, carries.
Yeah, and it's not you know, it's not necessarily like such a political one. Although you know, things like how easy, like I use ragdolls, like the way the kind of bodies kind of flail around based on physics. That's like a button, like it's like turn to ragdoll. Like it's super easy to do because people like it, and it's a visceral feeling. It's a simple visceral feeling. You know, just thinking about those sorts of presets, ragdoll physics is cool, but it's kind of visceral.
And you think it, and like, I mean, in the piece itself, there is this, you know, bigger figure controlling. It seems seemingly controlling these smaller figures, throwing them around, or you know, just looming over them. And I don't know, yeah, that kind of, that's like a good just metaphor for, I don't know how computers work in a way, or how, you know, programs work, software works. And then at the end of the video, like it's certain, I mean, at multiple times, but at the end where I think it kind of ends with all of the figures like falling down at the same time, that like when you're talking about like pushing a button, that makes us aware, like that you know, action makes us aware that there is someone who triggered that, you know. Like it's, you can kind of like at certain points in the video, you can kind of get lost in, because they're all doing their own actions, like in the where they're all in the cubes and they're all doing their own separate actions. You can kind of get lost in the, you know, visuals of it, but then at that moment at the end, that's like, I really like, you can tell the kind of hierarchy of power being exerted. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I was just saying there's definitely lots of room for interpretation. I think it touches on a lot of different things. I agree with what Matt said earlier about there being there's like a palette of different meanings that can come from watching the video at different times. And it definitely means a lot to me now in ways that I couldn't conceive of in April or March after the protests. I feel like there are things in the video that I see now that I didn't see before. And the ending is more rich to me now, people falling and that being a reminder of the controlled systems and the sort of dynamic of power and control throughout the video, you know, simulating an environment that we can explore and interpret for ourselves. This whole idea of simulating the real world is really interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, and like, I think that's also one of the things about the video that was like immediately really familiar. Like we've like many of us have played video games before, you know, it's this kind of, I mean, unreal landscape is kind of, I mean, it's so alien, but it's also so familiar to us just because we've, you know, a lot of us have I mean, and also the, you know, AR and VR becoming more ubiquitous too. But yeah, I think it takes on, it's interesting to think about it like in terms of also a speculative kind of thing, like what a rendering means in terms of like projecting into the future. Because like, I mean, just take COVID, like right now, like everyone is suddenly obsessed, you know, with data and, you know, the curve, you know, everyone's like thinking, where's this curve going? You know, let's make these graphs, let's make these projections. And like, yeah, like watching it, I mean, watching the video the first time, because COVID had kind of started already, the first time I was thinking a lot about like, yeah, like it being a kind of model for like like some kind of like dystopian like a social distancing model or like that was
right.
kind of
yeah, when I was making it, I was like pretty scared that like people are gonna be like, this is COVID art.
Yeah.
How do I do that? How do I do it? Yeah. No, but I do agree. There's I meant to send you guys this. There's a after there's this great book I read a couple years ago. After it was happening before, but it was there was a pretty big push after 9/11 to just kind of push technology into warfare programming, like speculative, as well as on the ground, like simulating, you know, battles, simulating, you know, scenarios, just kind of this pretty overt accelerationist position. You know, it's kind of, I think with the foresight we have now, maybe don't, I shouldn't say that, but it, you know, it's the sort of the ability to speculate, you know, it always kind of lends itself into a self-fulfilling prophecy one way or the other. Being able to envision what a future looks like means that this is the future you're planning for, you know, whether you want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that goes kind of lends itself to Collision Gripper as a video. Oh, Michael Lipson says, what book? It's called Virtuous War by James Derderian. There's a second issue that came out in like 2002. It's a really great book. It's like one of my favorites. You're welcome, Michael. But it is something that I think should be grappled with pretty intensely. Art, you know, digital artists' palettes and how they play into digital accelerationism. That's something I think a lot about. I mean, considering that I use like super antiquated technology, this sort of appreciation for what a piece of tech from the present, but also from the past can do for us, I think is pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah. no, that's really interesting.
Has anyone been seeing? I think this is the talking about 5G is a big rabbit hole I don't want to go down. But there's all these ads I've been hearing on, like even today on Spotify, where like Verizon or whoever's selling new phones like are describing 5G and they don't even know how to describe it. They kind of just say like be able to watch like your movies faster than your friends. Like it's such a who cares? No one really cares.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing of like, you know, getting the eagerness to move forward. You know, you kind of start, you're running down the hill, you're stumbling and you can't really stop yourself. See where you're really going. And that's interesting also to think about in terms of like AI and like, and yeah, I was reading about like the AI and the concept of like a known unknown. So like an unknown unknown is something that you don't know. Like it's a possibility that you haven't considered, but or something like that. But a known unknown is like something that you know or you have familiarity with but can't predict. And I think that's interesting in thinking about like how we use software, because it's like yeah, like you said, Photoshop and like even Unity is like they become like like the idea of something that's user friendly. So you feel like you have this level of control over it and you feel like you have this knowledge of it, but there is so much behind the wall that's happening, you know, on a micro level, or like that's more nebulous, and you know that has to do with these like machine learning and like how it reads certain codes that like is really, I think that's really interesting, and I was thinking about that with your
it's interesting to look at art's sort of like, what's the word, art and technology. I think saying even that phrase is
pretty, of art and technology.
But the you know, the way art has been used to justify technology, it goes way back. And I mean, you know, the word technology shouldn't really be a boogeyman,
right,
the word, but it is interesting the ways that you know, when I don't want to stumble over my words. When the like Rand corporations like started to develop the computers and the internet. I hope I'm not lying. But somebody in the chat. But you know, art, you know, video art and computer art was kind of like the like demonstration of like how cool this technology is. It was right there at the beginning of it. It has a very long history, which I think artists don't really. I mean, you know, not to think about history, but the present, artists I think really need to grapple with like how AI like is used in art, to justify AI and, you know, other, you know, policing AI, and, you know, how data is sold to an individual. These sort of speculative models that you were talking about earlier, Matt.
Facial recognition technology.
Yeah.
And just the rising culture of trying to combat those technologies. I was reading that article that you sent about the anti-facial recognition makeup.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me how people are, you know, the technology is advancing, and we're coming up with all of these ways to, you know, make detection convenient and more easy and accessible. And I think it's interesting how people are coming up with different ways of combating that and pushing back against the advancement and rise of technology. And I think that sort of ties in with the unknown unknowns, and just this idea of on the back end of computing power, how that sort of goes beyond human capabilities and goes beyond human processing power, and how we sort of push back against that, that power that computers can have, with facial recognition, for example. I just think that's all a sort of like interesting way of, and it speaks to art too. I think that's another meaning that I derived from Collision Gripper is you can't detect anyone's face, but you know that they're all being controlled. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I was thinking about a lot just recently. It wasn't something that I was thinking about initially, but after reading those articles and going back and forth and returning to the video a lot, that's something that I thought of, was that you don't know who these characters are, but you know that these characters have a role and they're being controlled and they're a part of a system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I love that connection to this like anti-surveillance technologies that we're developing. Like it's like this race, like we're the computers do something and then we develop something to try to combat it. But like for that specifically, that like makeup, the anti-surveillance makeup, like when I was looking at that, like there were other articles saying like why this makeup is like doesn't even work anymore, or like the computers are like learning it and making and like figuring it and yeah, and like there's now there's like programs or AI that can facial detect even people wearing face masks, like just the top half of your face, which is like crazy. But yeah, I think it's the faceless aspect of the characters is super, and it is kind of a form of anti-surveillance in a way, like these, like they might be, I don't know, like you can't identify them. I mean, not that they seem to have any will of, I mean, some of them seem to, but like it is interesting to think about that like identity and how you can shield that.
Yeah, I hope so. I was pretty, I think I had spoken about this, with y'all in the past. I was never, and I still kind of am not like sure like where Collision Gripper sits in this sort of conversation. I think because I made it from such a neutral position, like I wasn't making a piece to emote anything besides this looks cool. And I guess my own what's the word? My own interests and what I think is cool, plays into it. But I was, for a while, maybe concerned about how this piece comes off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I like, do you want to go further in that, or?
Sure. Oh, me or Marcus?
Yeah, Matt, go. You want to add on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I spoke about it earlier. I was not really, I made this with very much the intent of learning Unity, learning its quirks, learning its presets. I was very much, and anyone who works in that program plays into its presets and its structures of the way it was built, its protocols. So in that way, I think it's kind of inescapable. But my unacknowledgement of it, I think, is something I grapple with. And I like how the piece turned out. I don't regret it at all. But it's definitely it was me learning the program.
Right.
And it comes off that way.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. Even like doing not having an intent can just create like open it up for like that I think I was saying a bit about that earlier, but like
Yeah.
Collision Gripper has this ability, maybe because you weren't going for something specific with representation, that it can absorb. It has this absorptive quality, which is like,
Yeah.
that's what's most fascinating about it to me. We're in August now, and it's already morphed, twice this year, and it's like, what'll the piece mean in 3 months? What'll it mean in a year?
There's a great Philly guy, Jason Bussin. He did one of those. Do you guys know Hennessy Youngman?
Yeah.
He kind of he was like a YouTuber he did this character like kind of a decade ago about how to be an artist, and he's a black man, and he, in the video he like kind of dresses, he wears a lot of chains, he wears like a flat brim hat. He's definitely trying to put on a persona that art world wants to see. And he has this video of talking about like art, the best art asks questions, and he does a lot of these funny bits of like a chair that's not really able to sit on, like, how can I possibly sit on this chair? Silly stuff like that. But the video, I did not really have a perspective, and I guess that does make good art, whether or not I want to admit it.
Yeah, it gives it I think the piece is of its time, and it has like an effortless quality where it doesn't try too hard. You don't try too hard to communicate a specific thing. And I feel like that is what's most interesting about it, is that you can find your own meaning when you watch the video. Let's see, there's a question in the chat. So we'll get to questions later.
Yeah, I think we'll
Should I show this video? So should I show it now, or?
What time is it? Oh yeah. I'd say now would be probably a good time to.
Yeah. So I guess I was thinking a lot about how, whether or not I wanted to just talk about my own art for 45 minutes, before. I feel like there's a lot of really important things happening in the world. Obviously I did in the end, but I've been spending my time kind of making stickers and making flyers and things to hang up around the Philly streets, and give to friends and all that sort of stuff. I think I think making reproducible media, especially when there's a lot of things that I think people want to hear and should hear, want to see and should see. Just pushing that out, I think is pretty important. So I made a video about how to wheat paste and how to make stickers. Two very easily doable things to do in your own home. I think a lot of people have, including myself, have a lot they want to say, put out there. I think art people we're creative. We should be able to do that. So here's my video about how to make wheat paste and things and stickers.
Okay.
To make wheat paste, you'll need 3 tablespoons of flour, 1 cup of water, as well as some measuring cups, a small bowl, and a spoon. First, measure out 3 tablespoons of flour and put it in a bowl. Then take about a 1/4 cup of water and put it into your bowl of flour and mix it until you have a watery paste. You can put a bit more water into the bowl if you need to. In a saucepan, boil 3/4 of a cup of water. When the water starts to boil, turn off the fire and pour your paste into the water and mix it around. You should mix it until there are no chunks. From there, you can let it cool and put it in a Tupperware until you're ready to use it. When you're ready to use it, apply a coat of paste to the wall with a wooden spoon or a paintbrush. A paintbrush probably works better, but I don't own a paintbrush. Then, press a piece of paper onto the wall and smooth it out onto the paste. After that, you should apply another coat of paste onto the wall. In a couple hours, the paste will have hardened and dried onto the wall. Stickers are another effective way to get a message out. Any printer that accepts standard US size paper can accept sticker paper. If there's an image that you like or an image that you've made, you can put them into a grid in Photoshop or PowerPoint or really wherever, and then print them out onto your sticker paper. From there, you can just cut it.
We should be doing things right now. That's all I want to say. This all stuff is pretty easily Googleable. You know, just thinking about how you can play your part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's great, and I think, yeah, there's kind of like it does speak to collision gripper though. Is that there is it's like a DIY kind of mentality to it, like
Yeah.
kind of figuring out your own process in terms of this your video synthesis, and also, you know, figuring out what you can do just by yourself, you know, without huge amounts of resources.
Yeah,
Right.
the reason like I got into video mixers, and I think a lot of people do, because they're super cheap. You know, you can get a cheap one for like $20 if you spend enough time on eBay. You know, just being able to find the resources, you know, that and try to make the most of it. There's a ton of ways to hack stuff. Just requires some Googling, some reading, some a little passion. That sounds cool.
Right.
Anyways.
All right. So I think we have time for some questions. I think there's already one. Do you want to go for it, Marcus?
Yeah. So John has a question, and he says, let's see. He says, you've all talked about the knowns and the unknowns. One way to think about your own compulsions, i.e. your handling of the protocols and needs of the software, is to think about the unknown knowns, the things you don't know, you know. Not having an intent, as Matthew says, means what your unconscious intentions come out. Means that your unconscious intentions come out, whether you like it or not. That's the good news. In other words, what did you learn about your own interests through making this piece and dealing with the response to it? Also, it's hard not to think of the artist Ed Atkins. When I look at this film, do you see yourself in relation to this work?
I guess I'll answer. I like Ed Atkins a lot. I haven't spent too much time with his work. I like, you know, I haven't spent too much time with his work, I guess I'll say. I find him pretty inspiring. I think a lot of what how do I phrase this? What artists can do, you know, I think artists use 3D imagery in kind of a hacky way. Like, you know, it's such an industry, being able to produce 3D models for movies, for television, what have you. I think it's pretty exciting to be able to, you know, I think typically artists use 3D modeling, you know, they're self-taught. They're just learning it at their own speed, at their own pace. I think that's a pretty inspiring thing to be able to do, kind of forego, you know, industry taught ethos of things. I should spend more time with his work though, admittedly. So in other words, what did you learn about your own interest in making this piece, dealing with the response to it? I learned, I think this piece was definitely it's dark in here now. It's one, something I made with a lot of passion. You know, it's a pretty, you know, the 3D modeling and like a video game engine are both pretty high learning curve processes to get the hang of. I think just being able to work on something that makes you feel really good, I think is good. For the last part, I'm excited to see John's piece as well.
Yeah. John too. Coming up in a couple weeks. And then he also says, finally, I would love to hear Matt talk about the tone of his work, which for me is doubly dark because the Play-Doh palette and the sense that these bodies are being tested, surveilled, made to be both anonymous and absolutely substitutable, parts of an incomprehensibly larger whole. I still feel the pain of the collisions and the claustrophobia, Mark's word, of the spaces. In other words, they may look cool and be the outcome of play and experimentation. As a maker, I get that. But it looks hot, like a cauldron where focus is impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I think about. I've been thinking about a lot, which admittedly I should have probably thought about more. Making work in a video game renderer, I think, is a pretty interesting sort of technique thing to do. I think video games often, if it's not necessarily just like a violent video game, but are trying to emote something pretty visceral out of you pretty quickly. And the way, there's certain things that are like immediately packed into the program, like kind of falling physics, things like that, kind of lend itself to making like something visceral. I think video artists are kind of lend themselves to emoting a lot out of an image. It's a pretty what's the word? It can oftentimes be pretty overwhelming, video art. The way you're trying to strike something out of a viewer. I definitely feel that. So yeah, I think kind of managing viscerality and as well as the world are things that I think are pretty important to think about, and things I'm excited to think about in the future dealing with this. Yeah, thanks for the question. I like that question.
He has one more also. Marcus, you want to read that?
Yes. So John has one last question. He says the bodies in Collision Ripper are given various skin tones, but no obvious genders, though they all do seem male. How do you think about representing bodies in terms of discernible traits and categories?
That's a good question. It's something that, again, in my own experimentation with this process, I made a stick figure, and a stick figure is represented as male. It's got pants, however you want to put it. Again, yeah, these are good questions. I appreciate this, John. The defaults in life and the defaults in a video game are similar. A innocuous person looks male. It's definitely a truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a higher focus on less playing into. Never foregoing the fact that I'm working in pieces of software that have their own constructs and protocols and what have you, but at the same time being aware of those very protocols is it's important. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Okay, cool.
And there's another question from I think Phyllis Lavine. What projects are you working on now? So what's your latest?
I'm making a poster for my friend Zine Mom. I'm working on more videos. I was making stickers for a while, which I mentioned earlier. Yep.
You love to see the family question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so
Great.
nice. Do we have any other questions? We have like 5-ish minutes, 5 to 10 minutes left. We have a little poll. Have you used the captioning feature during tonight's program? Just if you wanna do that poll, that'd be great. Any last questions?
Thanks for, if there's no more questions.
There's one more. Jack says, can you speak at all about the music accompanying?
Yeah, absolutely. A very good friend of mine, Alex, he was interested in making the music. I showed him some videos of things I was working on, sort of an abstracted kind of lost scenario. I think I showed him the scene of people walking around in that sort of cityscape. It was supposed to emulate walking around the cityscape, but obviously it looks pretty distorted, and it only slightly embodies walking around the cityscape, which is kind of what I try to do with the work. Try to walk the line of abstraction and emulation. He recognized, the sort of kind of what's the word? What's the word? Like in betweenness. What's that word? Purgatory. I wanted to be working in, and he made a piece for it. He just finished school as well, so he had some pieces to give to me that he'd been working on. Alex Petshaft. He's very talented.
Yeah, I loved the music. That was definitely it definitely helped really strengthens the mood of the whole thing. It fully transports us, past what the image are.
I'm really happy with how it turned out. The audio. I think it's a great piece.
Awesome.
Well, that I think seems to be the last question. If you don't have any more, then I'll do some closing remarks. But I kind of want to just keep talking. This is so fun.
Yeah. What time did Natalie say we had to?
Like 7:15, like max. But
I'm down to talk some more.
I mean, maybe a couple more. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to touch on?
I don't know. I appreciated talking with you guys for sure. I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say about it. I really appreciate feedback.
There's one.
Cool.
Yeah, there's another one. Raphael Sandler says, now that you've used Unity and learned about it a bit, how do you think it'll affect the process of your next work?
I'm a lot more interested in working on like a piece with a discernible narrative. Maybe a little, I think there's a narrative in the piece that I made, but a script, those sort of things. I have like a preview of what I've been doing. I don't know if I can share that. I think now that I'm past the stage of just experimentation, being able to, write a storyboard, write audio, or write, what's the word, narrative words. That's a script. Thank you. I think, experimentation is really important, especially in working with, when trying to make art. That's crucial. So I really appreciated working in Collision Gripper, doing that. I think being able to write out what I want to do from the get-go is something I've been thinking a lot about. Thinking about a story that I find cunning, that I find exciting. I think just being able to make this like a typical piece of art have a intention from the beginning and work towards it. I'm excited to do that. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like so have you thought about like actual screenplays and like having like people do voice recordings over
I like the idea of kind of existing still in this limbo between like abstraction and emulation. I like the way like Sims or Animal Crossing people talk, like sort of like mumbling.
Oh yeah.
And having text under it. That's kind of what I've been thinking. Because I've also think about a way to like, clear audio sounds so out of place in like the world I'm trying to make. Where I don't know how I could do that. I've also been experimenting with like new processes, like in the way I described like the multiple loops in these video boxes, these video mixers. So I've been using a streaming piece of software called OBS to capture all my video, and I think it loses some of its like kind of distorted atmosphere, but it looks a lot cleaner. I'm trying to find a way to sort of balance those two as well. I think the way you had mentioned PS1s earlier, Marcus, and the way without trying to harp on like something antiquated for the sake of it looking antiquated, the way they dither or like sort of have that like sort of noise, that kind of textured procedural noise around the corners of like 3D models, it's really cool. I'm interested in trying to emulate that.
Yeah, I thought about PlayStation 1 because I just remember the texture and the atmosphere and this sort of aura that it gave off when you open when you start the PS1 before the game starts. There's that intro and then that noise.
That big like whoosh, the like THX type sound.
Yeah, that and that paired with the 4:3 aspect ratio TVs that we had with the fuzz and the noise, it was just so like textured, and it always felt really organic. I think
there's like a kind of beautiful texture that you get from working in older technology. You don't have to like think about like how many frames per second this is. It looks like clear. It looks better. Like even just funneling like these things into like a TV that's not like a CRT. Like people will always say it's the same reason like GameCube players want to play on like old boxy CRTs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's certain, I think back to what I was talking about earlier. There's definitely aspects of more antiquated tech that are just even like objectively better, like
right
than newer things. Like if we're talking like frames, even if we're talking like the way things move, trying to kind of walk the line between like what works best for me, I think is important.
Yeah, well, we're super excited to see what's next.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this work informs your future work.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the rest of. I really enjoyed Sunny's talk. I'm excited to see the rest of the talks and the rest of the videos.
I'll transition that to a little outro. Thanks so much, Matt, for talking to us. This was so fun. Really interesting. Thanks for the ICA for facilitating this. And thanks for all the viewers who tuned in and gave us an hour of your time. There's a survey in the chat, which you can give your feedback on this talk. And it only takes a couple seconds, so that'd be great if you could do that. Tune in next week, next Wednesday next week we have Catalina Jordan Alvarez and her video Soundspring number 6, The School and the Home, and a talk on next Wednesday, 6 p.m. with Lino Kino members Emily Slater and Maya Shengold moderating, which is going to be really great. And I'm super excited to tune into that. So yeah.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone. This was really fun. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Beth.
Oh yeah, Natalie. Thank you so much. Oh,
Derek.
Catalina. All right.
Thanks, Catalina. All right.
Cool. All right. I guess this is goodbye.
Have a great night, guys. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Have fun cooking, Matt. And safe travels tomorrow back to Philly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Bye.
Have a good one.
Peace out.
Bye.